Hi everyone, welcome to Chapter 7, which is Conversations. And I think you will find this chapter very interesting. I hope that you get a lot from the reading and that you get a lot from the lecture. So let's go ahead and talk about talking. So a few questions to begin, some food for thought for you. Do you like to talk? And that's a question that I think sometimes we consider, sometimes we don't. But if we tease that apart further, how much do we enjoy engaging in small talk? So that's one element of a conversation. Are you someone that can just chit chat about anything and you don't really mind the topic, so small talk is fine for you? Do you like spending a lot of time talking to others? Are you somebody that really enjoys having lots of conversations? You tend to be very social, you tend to be very outgoing, outspoken. What about how much do you enjoy yourself in situations that compel you to mingle and strike up conversations with people that you don't know well, or maybe that you don't even know at all? Are you that type of person that you really love being in a new environment with new people and you get to meet and have conversations with people that you might not have ever, had the chance to talk to in the past? And then what about how at ease you are with sharing personal information with others? Are you someone that you're very open and willing to discuss personal things, or are you someone that tends to be more reserved with personal disclosure? So those are 4 questions that we can discuss a little further in the reflection post if you'd like. Just share with me your thoughts on all or some of those questions. If that really applies to you, explain why and what your thoughts are on those questions. And then if that's not you at all, maybe you want to explain why you're not comfortable or you don't like those things too. Okay, so talk. On page 210 in the text, I'm not going to read it to you for sake of time, but please read the section about Alberto on 210. And then for the activity for the week in the reflection post, if you were Alberto's friend, what advice would you have given him about how to survive and thrive at a company party or similar function? So based on what you read on page 210, what advice would you have given about how to survive and thrive at a company party or any kind of similar function? And then, have you ever been in a situation similar to the one Alberto found himself in? And how did you handle it? And if you didn't handle it well, how do you wish you would have handled it? So once you look at that example on page 210, the activity for this week is to make sure that you, acknowledge what you might have done, and then if you have ever been in a similar situation, how you handled it or what you would have done differently. So let's get into the heart of the conversation here. If we talk about the definition, it's a relatively informal social interaction in which the roles of speaker and hearer are exchanged in a non-automatic fashion under the collaborative management of all parties. Okay, what does all that mean? I know, let's look at it a little more specifically. So when we think about conversations, the first thing that we can consider are the rules. Communication is regulated by conversational rules, and we've talked about how communication is a process and there are elements and components, etc. Rules are a part of the conversational process, and so rules reveal behaviors that are preferred or prohibited in various social situations. So the rules are not necessarily explicit all of the time. Sometimes they're implicit and sometimes they're implied. So it's not that you're going into a conversation and you're being told this is X, Y, and Z, what I'm expecting out of this conversation. Sometimes it's just kind of an unspoken, understated type of rule where behaviors that would be preferred. So if you're speaking to someone in authority, the preference would be that you would have a more polite or respectful conversational tone. And then what would be prohibited? For example, it might be using foul language in front of your boss or in front of your mom or, whatever person you would think that might be inappropriate for. And those aren't necessarily stated rules, but those are kind of understood that those would vary depending on the situation. So, for example, how do you respond when someone says hi? Do you think that that is different based on the person? Do you think is different based on the way that they say hello? If they say hi versus hello versus hey versus some other greeting, how do you respond? And if you want to talk about that in your reflection, that might be interesting to get some different perspectives on that. So how do you respond when someone says hi? How governed is your response by rules that you've learned or that you've assumed to be true? And as we look at the rules in conversation, if we explore the dynamics of the exchanges, we can improve our skills for chit-chatting, and that will be something that we cover. Okay, so let the games begin. If we consider conversation to be a game of sorts, because it is, we can apply rules. So can you visualize a conversation as a game? So take a minute and try to envision the conversation and the back and forth between two people as a game, and it can be any kind of game that you think applies. Now, interestingly, the rules are not written down, like in Monopoly, for example. So it's not that we have stated expectations that we read ahead of time, like I said. The rules are constantly changing and they're contextual, so depending on the situation, the person, the environment, all of those rules would change. Now, here's food for thought as well. Do we use different rules with different games? Or i.e. conversations? And I would argue, yes, we absolutely do. So if you wanted to throw out in your reflection post some of the different rules with different conversations that you think apply or are appropriate, that's something that you can discuss as well. So structure in a conversation is extremely important. So we've talked about there are rules in conversation, but now we're going to move into the actual structure of how the conversation goes. 5 elements. The first is greeting, and we'll actually cover all of these in more detail on the next slide, so I'll just briefly go through them. So the greeting is 1, topic priming is next, the heart of the conversation is 3rd, preliminary processing is 4th, and the closing is 5th. Now, it's important to note that these are not independent or mutually exclusive elements, and so usually there are a lot of overlap with these elements in the structure of a conversation. So it's not like the greeting occurs completely individually and then it turns into topic priming and then you get to the heart of the conversation. It's not sequential. It's more that they flow into the next. It's more of a fluidity in the conversation. So some of those things can be, you might have the first 3 all simultaneously working in the structure of the conversation, but all 3 of those elements are present, even if they're not done in a specific sequential order. So let's look at these a little more closely. Okay, the greeting. You have to start somewhere. Every conversation begins with a greeting. It doesn't necessarily have to be a word, but there's some kind of acknowledgement that a conversation begins. So the superficial message that opens communication channels is an easy way to think of a greeting. And basically the purpose of the greeting is letting others know that we are accessible. So we are communicating that we are ready and willing to converse with someone when we have a greeting. Now there are 3 categories of greetings. There are questions, there are advertisements, and there are compliments. So in the categories, if we think of questions, that might be an easy way to start a conversation. So, the age-old, how about those bucks, or how about those rays? That's kind of a joke that people use that, but a question is an interesting way to start a conversation because it allows the other person to respond, and it's pretty easy to come up with a relevant question most of the time. Now, an advertisement is some type of comment where you are basically advertising yourself as accessible or ready to converse. So you might say, I'd like to talk to you about whatever. You're basically very clearly expressing your desire to have a conversation. And then a compliment is a way that you can get a conversation started based on being polite or courteous to the other person. So you might say, I really like your car, or I noticed that you have a child that's about the same age as my child, whatever. And so there's a way to compliment the other person that also can start a conversation. So one of three categories for greeting, or there are three types of greetings. And I don't know, I'm going on what the book says, but I'm a little iffy on some of these, but I'll share with you anyway. They are saying that the three types of greetings can include cute or flippant greetings. Now, pay attention to the fact that types can also be subcategorized under the categories. So you could use a cute or flippant question, you could use a cute or flippant advertisement, you can use a cute or flippant compliment. So don't think of those as completely separated. They're more of a subcategory of the questions, advertisements, and compliments. But anyway, so cute or flippant, meaning you say something kind of designed to get a rise out of someone, or to be witty, or to be funny, or to throw humor in, but sometimes it can be a little off color or off-putting. Sometimes pickup lines can be viewed as cute or flippant. So certain types of jokes can be cute or flippant, so that's one type. The innocuous type is kind of the opposite of the flippant type, which basically is that an innocuous type would be something that's not likely to offend anyone. It's just pretty neutral and basic and doesn't really have the power to make a negative impression. And then direct type would be just very to the point, succinct, and clear. Okay, so I would like you, either on your paper or just think about it, whatever. Sorry, I have to get one in every time, Okay, so what are your favorite greetings? And it doesn't have to be a whole bunch, but just think about if you were going to start a conversation with somebody, what is your favorite 1 or 2 or 3 greetings that you use? And then you can also consider, what are your favorite icebreakers? And what are your favorite conversation starters? So just consider what you typically tend to use or what you prefer. And if you want to throw a couple of those in your reflection post and maybe explain why you like those or use those, that would be fine. So now we're moving into topic priming. So we've covered greeting. Now topic priming comes in as a way of previewing the topic that's going to be discussed. So if you think about, I don't know how many of you, I grew up in Florida and everyone has a pool. If you grew up north, I suppose that's not the case. But if you think about when you maintain a pool, you have to prime the pool. And some of you may not have any idea what that means, but basically it just means you have to make sure that everything is in working order and it has to be ready. You prime the pump so that it's ready to function appropriately. And that's often what you do when you put the chemicals in so that everything is in balance. So if you're topic priming, you're basically kind of making sure that everything's going to go smoothly. And the way to think of that is previewing the topic. And there are 3 major topics in conversation: ourselves, the other person, or a situation. And so if we're topic priming, we will often ask a question rather than make a statement. And so that tends to make sense, because if we're previewing the topic, often we will throw it out and see what the response is. And open-ended questions are more likely to involve the other person. And we've talked about open-ended questions before, so that is an effective way of topic priming. Excuse me. So, once we've done the greeting and topic priming, we move into the heart of conversation. Sorry, so basically this is the meat and potatoes, as my brother says. He's the meat and potato guy. And basically the heart of the conversation is why we are having the conversation in the first place. So you've initiated the conversation, you've primed the topic, you have a preview of what's going to be discussed. Now the heart of conversation is getting to the purpose. Oops. And then preliminary processing is your earliest impressions and analysis of the conversation. Basically, how did that go?